Okay. So a few weeks ago, I had an interesting conversation with two of my female coworkers at work. And it was interesting in the fact that we were speaking about feminism. And it was something that is going to stay with me for a while because it was two women. And for the first time, I heard two women tell me that they did not believe in feminism. That was something that is very strange to me. And it's funny because this was actually on March 8th, which is Women's Day. And they told me that they did not think that there should be a Women's Day if men do not have a Men's Day. And I told them, well, you see, 364 days of the year are Men's Day. And they didn't necessarily grasp the concept. So today, much like I try to do for them, I want to enlighten you on why feminism is still something that is very relevant in today's society. So feminism is really nothing new. It's a concept that's been around for a really long time. Essentially since the dawn of systematic oppression created by the patriarchy, or in simpler terms, by men. And one of the more recent movements was in the 1960s and 70s, when there was all these sorts of protests and riots for wage equality, or equality and equal pay, essentially. So one of the misconceptions about feminism is that you are a feminazi, or you are a prude, a busybody, a butch, man-hating lesbian if you believe that women are equal to men. And this is not always the case. So this is Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. She is a Nigerian feminist and an author. She is very influential in the feminist movements. This conference is actually from a TED Talk. It's a very popular TED Talk if you've never seen it, and it was held in Euston, London. In this, she just basically talked about what it was like being raised in Nigeria, and the moment that she not only discovered she was a feminist, but the moment that she was able to admit it to herself, which was a very big moment for her. So she has a definition of feminism that's really interesting, and she actually expressed this in her TED Talk. Her definition is feminist, a person who believes in the social, political, and economic equality of the sexes. And this was a very interesting definition because it really painted it in a new light, and it made people realize that, feminism isn't for man-hating, it's more for equality, which is something that everyone should understand. So speaking of economic inequality, I have a chart for you right here, and this is from the 2012 Bureau, so the Census Bureau. And every chart is kind of the same. They do one of these every year. And if you can actually see that annually women make at least $10,000 less than men, 70 cents less an hour. And this is a pretty big deal because that's a lot of money. And there's actually a law that went into effect, the Equal Pay Act, which is supposed to prohibit this, but yet it is still happening. And it happens every year, and every year the chart looks almost identical. It's $10,000 less in almost every profession. So one thing that's always said is, why don't they just get better jobs? Why don't women just aim for a higher paying career such as computer science or engineering? The issue with that is that those are very hostile workplaces for women. According to Gillian Berman of Huffington Post, she says that these are the worst places for women. The environment is awful, and they are always mistreated by men. So, speaking of hostility towards women, this is Meninism. If you've never heard of Meninism, it is the most foolish concept you're going to hear of for the rest of your life. So essentially, these are people who believe that everything is okay and that we don't need feminism. These are people who are saying that feminism is not for equality. It is for a world dominated by women. And it's really a cynical concept because they are taking steps backwards. They are going on social media and they are slandering women. They are slut-shaming. They are doing all these things that are just awful, awful things. And there's actually a picture, or various pictures, of people wearing the Meninist merchandise. And they really have no agenda other than to spread hate. And it's really an awful, awful thing. The funny thing about it is that people take this very seriously, and it actually started as a joke on Twitter in early 2015. So luckily, feminism always takes a stand, quite literally. So this is Beyonce at the 2014 VMAs, and this moment was very important because for the first time we saw a woman who is very well known, and she was declaring herself a feminist. She was not afraid to let billions of people know that this is something she supports, this is something she will continue to support for a very long time. And then this is a picture of a lot of feminists, not only women but men. We have Nicki Minaj, Emma Watson, who actually did the He for She campaign, so she's been a very coveted feminist, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Taylor Swift, Patrick Stewart, and Joss Whedon. So one of my favorite quotes is from Taylor Swift, and she has a very interesting way of looking at feminism. She kind of considers herself to have gone through a feminist awakening. She says, the way that feminism was phrased in culture and society was that you hate men. And now I think a lot of girls have had a feminist awakening because they understand what the word actually means. And that's something that a lot of people can relate to because they start to realize that they're understanding what it really means. And then one of my favorite quotes that I just discovered by a famous director, Joss Whedon, is, you either believe that women are people or you don't. So, in conclusion, I hope that the misconception is kind of cleared for you and that there is a realization that feminism is still incredibly relevant. I want to leave you with the notion that feminism is not for man-hating. It never has been and it never will be, but for equality. And who knows, maybe you all have little qualities about you that can consider you feminists today.
All right, Cassie, what did you think?
All right. Well, I mean, from the moment you began with your narrative about your conversation with your coworkers, I mean, my attention was captured. I'm like a huge fan. I'm a sociology major, and my love is like gender and sex, and so I was just like so excited when I saw the word feminism appear on the screen, and I was like, wow, how exciting. And then I was even more excited when you started by clearing the misconception about, you know, butch lesbian are the only people who can be feminists, and I loved that, so you definitely got my attention. I felt like you had a really clear structure. Obviously your visuals complemented that. The PowerPoint was great. One con, when you introduced Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, I was like, wow, I have watched that talk a few times. I even couldn't pronounce it as well as you did. By the way, that was like flawless. I was like, oh my gosh, he just did that. So I would have loved maybe even like just a clip from that talk. It's such a great talk. And even when you brought up the talks later, like Joseph Gordon-Levitt's talk, or even a clip of Beyonce, like I would have loved a video clip somewhere in there. That would be my only con. Actually, I did have one more. The
Feminism.
I can't even say it, but yeah, the feminist part seemed a little bit random to me. Your presentation was all about feminism, and I think maybe if you just introduced it in a different way, like you said, you know, there are people who consider themselves opponents of feminism, and there's this one group who take this campaign really seriously, they're feminists. I think that would have been more in context, but it was like feminist, 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 feminist again, and it just seemed like slightly out of place. But other than that, I mean, great intro, great conclusion, you totally wrapped it all up. I loved the graphic you ended with. I mean, I just thought it was like awesome. So great job.
Well, I'd agree. I like the opening very much, the experience of the conversation. And one of the things that I think is important about that is that it does set up a little bit of a controversy about what the term feminist means. And when you use that first definition that you provide, which is the suppression of one group by the patriarchy, I forget whatever the phrase is, it's a little convoluted, but it's also a perfect example of why there is a negative reaction to the definition of feminism, because it seems to classify people as oppressors and as if, I think there is an idea that there is a cultural issue that's gone on here. There are reasons that people need to adjust their attitude about this, and the way in which feminism is often portrayed is that the people who are advocates of feminism or who have treated it as a subject of study and scholarly development are often seen as persecutors of people who they see as being their oppressors. So that's why there is this kind of reactionary movement that goes along with what's being discussed. And we don't really get much discussion of that. We just get kind of a discussion of, I look at that, the one definition that you had up there, somebody who sees a woman as being, equal and a person, that kind of stuff, and you got a couple of, who doesn't see that, at least in this culture? I mean, there are maybe cultures in the world that see women as chattel and something that are property to be distributed. But there are things in this culture where there are these kinds of problems, and it's not because of the definition that you're talking about, it's something else. Maybe it's a tradition, maybe it's a set of rules, and to me that's the kind of stuff that I think needs to be talked about a little bit more. Either you need to go to the broader subject of how women are treated worldwide and viewed in different cultures and say, this is why feminism is necessary, because women are enslaved and suppressed in places and they are not given opportunities. Or you need to talk about the political issues that are present in this country, which is kind of what you get to with this, Meninist sort of thing, which is kind of a reactionary movement. However, calling them a hate group is the equivalent of calling them, the other side saying they're feminazis. To me, it's just name calling one direction or the other, and without any examples or explanations or descriptions of what it is they did. I mean, you just say, oh, they're so hateful and awful and terrible and bad. I'm going, what are they, hanging women in trees? Are they enslaving them someplace? Or do they just have a different point of view? Now, the truth of the matter is, anybody who goes on the internet and reads anything that other people have posted is going to find a bunch of stuff out there that makes us all look like we are not deserving to be human beings. I mean, I cannot believe the vitriol that ends up on a variety of posts. You offer an opinion and the world is willing to spew out hate regardless of what that opinion is, both directions. So I think you got to be a little bit careful about classifying, just as, if it's wrong to classify feminists as being feminazis who are all men-hating lesbians, then perhaps it's wrong to classify people who see themselves as standing for traditional values as women-hating and oppressors. It's just one of those things I think is a little bit problematic. I thought that there wasn't much organization to the speech. I thought there are a lot of bullet point ideas that you talk about, and you give some nice examples and explanations, and clearly you're passionate about it. I like that. I think that you speak well when you're talking to us about those issues, and that comes across really effectively. But Cassie said it, some things just feel a little random when they come in, and I'm going, well, why am I seeing this? The idea that here are five, you got the picture of all the celebrities up there who are feminists. I'm going, well, why do they get to be called feminists and other people don't get to be called feminists? I think there's a reason that those people are identified as feminists, because they've spoken up on some particular issue, they've taken lead for some group or cause. That's the kind of thing that you ought to be talking about. Like I said, I think that there are two different ways you could go on this speech. One would be to talk about the political controversy in this culture, which involves the feminazis and the meninists, kind of thing. and let's talk about why there is this clash on this and what it all means, or to talk about the idea of feminism as a concept, liberating people from, you know, like that patriarchy thing that you talked about earlier. I think that might be, you know, another way to go. So I'd have picked one or the other and focused on that. And like I said, I think you need a little bit more structure to those materials too. All right, thank you.